Good evening. It's just gone past. I'm Councillor Stuart Jeffrey, Leader of the Council. I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting of Cabinet. May I take this opportunity to advise you that if the fire alarm does sound, please remain seated, and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation if necessary. Tonight's proceedings will be webcast by the Council, but if anyone else is intending to record these proceedings, can you please let me know now? Malcolm's not here. I ask this question not to stop you, but to merely ensure that members of the public in the room know that this is taking place. Item 1, are there any apologies for absence? I'm pretty certain there aren't, because I can see all of us here. Item 2, urgent items. There is one urgent item this evening which provides feedback from the committees that have considered items on the agenda after it was published. Hopefully you've got a copy of that. Additionally, I'd like to propose to take items 12 and 19 together, as both items relate to the use of drones by the Community Protection Team. Hopefully everyone's happy with that. Good. Item 3, notification of visiting members. Now, I think, well, yeah, you are a visiting member, I suppose, but you're also here to speak. So, come and say hello.
Good evening, members. Councillor Russell here for presenting the item for overview and scrutiny on item 16, and I'd also like to speak on item 26. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Good evening. Councillor Sweetman here to ask a question. Thank you.
Councillor Greenan here to ask a question.
So, both of you for item 10, good. Item 4, are there any disclosures by members and officers, or officers? Nope, excellent. Item 5, disclosures of lobbying, are there any? Nope. Item 6, I move that all items be taken in public. We do have papers, we have yellow papers, but I'd rather take the items in public so that we can have a discussion. We can come back if we feel the need to move into a closed session, but I'd like to take all items in public. Are you agreed? Excellent. Item 7, minutes of the last meeting. I move that the minutes of 19th of March 2025 be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Item 8, there are no petitions this evening. Item 9, there is one question from a local resident. Sean, I believe that's you.
Good evening. Maidstone Borough Council is promoting an online Climate Ambassadors Programme event as part of its climate change campaign. This initiative, which is supported by non-governmental organisations, offers non-curriculum based training. However, a recent response to a Freedom of Information request from the Department of Education confirms that the guidance provided for the Climate Action Strategy is non-statutory. Additionally, the Department of Education has stated that climate action plans are not currently mandated. Question: given that the district does not have educational authority, why does the council feel the need to introduce and support the non-mandated emotional conditioning of parents, teachers and governors using public funds through supporting the implementation of climate action plans in our educational settings?
Thank you, Mr. Turner. That's a question to Councillor Summersgill in your role as Climate Transition and Nature Recovery.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Turner. I'm very happy to address this query, having been married to a teacher for more than 40 years and a school governor for 15 years at Lewes Juniors and Maidstone Grammar. It may be outside my cabinet role, but of great personal importance to me, education. And as a voluntary eco-schools assessor in Kent for a decade or more, I was greatly pleased to see how the non-curricular work by young children and their adult guiders led to a deep interest in subjects like recycling, growing food, water control and biodiversity. Lessons that I know the children took home to teach their parents, most of them unaware of those points. I would quote from the gov.uk guidance for sustainability leadership and climate action plans in education. The Sustainability and Climate Change Strategy for Education states that by September 2025, all education settings will have nominated a sustainability lead and put in place a climate action plan. This includes early year settings, schools, multi-academy trusts, colleges and universities. As you say, this is non-statutory guidance, but support is available to nurseries, schools and colleges and provided by the Department for Education through three organisations: Sustainability Support for Education, the Climate Ambassador Programme and the National Education Nature Park. There are other organisations providing courses, products and services to support an education setting and their approach to climate change. Though this guidance is not mandatory, it's the choice of schools to engage with this guidance. Many Maidstone schools already have someone in post for the sustainability lead role, and we have had several requests from schools requesting support for creating a climate action plan from those sustainability leads. The training webinar itself is being offered free of charge through Climate Ambassadors, one of the three organisations the Department for Education specified. MBC have not provided any funding for this. The invitation to join the free training session is in no way mandatory for schools to join, but is available for interested parties, and we have over 10 schools registered to attend so far. The training session was arranged as a result of demand from school sustainability leads. MBC are happy to connect schools with the resources they need to deliver a climate action plan if they choose to do so, and at no cost to public funds managed by MBC.
Thank you, Councillor Summersgill. Mr Turner, do you have a supplementary question arising either from your initial question or from the response from Councillor Summersgill?
I do. The key argument against climate emergency measures is that the UK contributes less than 1% of global CO2 emissions. Being a voice for children, after a recent circular economy webinar, Sustainably in Education, I observed that these non-governmental organisations, with their ideological agendas cloaked in educational funding, claim to promote critical thinking and empowering students. Question: before allocating public funds, have Maidstone Borough councillors and officers considered the psychological risks to children being told that the world is ending if they don't take action?
Thank you, Mr Turner. Councillor Summersgill, do you have a response?
I will have to check the psychological question with officers, but I do not believe so, and as I mentioned, we are not allocating any public funds on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Turner. Right, there are two questions from councillors. Councillor Sweetman, I think you're first.
Good evening, everyone. At the last Climate Transition, Corporate and Environmental Services Policy Advisory Committee meeting, a comment was made that Councillor Jeffrey has an ideological obsession with climate change. I would like to ask Councillor Jeffrey why he has an ideological obsession with climate change.
Thank you, Councillor Sweetman. And it kind of picks up on Mr Turner's points as well a little bit, I guess. I mean, I was born quite a long time ago. My colleagues here are all, except for one of them, older than me, and Kathy's obviously much younger than me. carbon dioxide was 325 parts per million when I was born. It's now 430. It's gone up a third. So there's a third more carbon dioxide in the air, causing untold, pretty damn awful predictions that are running faster than even the predictions have them. The IPCC says we're on course to 3 or 4 degrees rise by 2100, and the councillor who made that comment about ideological obsession, he may well could be alive in 2100. My daughter could be alive in 2100. A 3 or 4 degree rise would result in, well, it would certainly result in societal collapse, billions of deaths, conflict, etc., etc. And frankly, picking up on the psychological impacts, the last survey I saw globally said that young adults had, about 70% of them were distressed about the climate. And for me, telling the truth is absolutely the right thing to do, and demonstrating that we are trying to do as much as we possibly can to mitigate and adapt is essential. Without that, I would be in that 70% if I'm not already. The impacts locally: ocean acidification, vector diseases, dengue fever. We've already got sightings of Aedes albopictus, and Tony will give me the UK name, which I think is Asian tiger mosquito. I mean, it's already in Kent. It carries dengue fever. It's working its way towards us. We're looking, with that sort of rise, a 1 metre sea level rise. That's going to be disastrous for the town centre, let alone the coast of Kent. We had, this is an existential problem, and therefore I would like an existence going into the future for myself, for you, for everyone, and particularly the children. So yeah, it is ideological. It is an obsession, but it's also the right thing to do. Do you have a supplementary arising from either my response or your initial question?
Thank you very much, Councillor Jeffrey. That was the most satisfactory answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Greenan, I think you're up next with a question to Councillor Nagy.
Thank you. Following the agreement for a citizens' assembly to address the issue of violence against women and girls in our borough, please can the Cabinet Member for Community Cohesion and Safety explain how the Council will ensure that women and girls from ethnic minority groups, including Gypsy, Roma and Irish traveller groups, have an equal opportunity to participate and share their experiences?
Councillor Nagy.
Thank you for that question. There will be 2 separate opportunities for residents to participate, both in the engagement event itself, but also in the process of evidence gathering of live experiences or lived experiences. The project team have already undertaken the Equality Impact Assessment, which identifies barriers to engagement from relying solely on voluntary applications. This may exclude those from minority groups, including Gypsy, Romani, travellers, but also beyond these in the communities. One significant barrier to anyone participating in the event is accessibility costs, such as locations, time of day, caring costs, etc. And we'll be working with our facilitators to ensure that these barriers are addressed and communicated to ensure that people feel able to participate. The cost of this has been budgeted for. We have undertaken our own work in the last year to understand what barriers are in place for some of the ethnic minority communities participating in our engagement activities. This identified some local communities place greater importance, or their views will impact the final outcome, and receiving feedback after the event. This learning will be a factor into our approach to recruitment. Reaching our lesser hard communities was also identified in our wider documentations. our tender documentations, and we asked applying organisations to consider how this would be addressed based on their expert experiences. Proposing organisations have identified the importance of engaging trusted partners at this early stage to being key to maximising this engagement to those communities that are less likely to engage with the council. We will work with our communications team, trusted partners and affiliation teams to build a communication plan that maximises engagement using both passive and protective approaches across a large range of channels to ensure that opportunity to participate is open to everyone. The event is well advertised and misinformation is dispelled.
Thank you, Councillor Nagy. Councillor Greenan, do you have a supplementary rising from either your initial question or Councillor Nagy's response?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Oh, there you go.
Got off lightly, Dave. Thanks, Councillor Greenan. Item 11 then. It's next, I think. There are no matters referred to the Cabinet by another committee. We're taking 12 later, that's why I suddenly jumped to 13. Matters referred to the Cabinet by another committee, there are none. Item 14, matter related to a serious service failure, there are none. 15 is receipt of written representations from members of the Council, there are none. So item 16, this is the report of Overview and Scrutiny on the planning enforcement review. Councillor Russell, if you'd like to speak on this.
Thank you. This was the second of the reviews that we carried out at Overview and Scrutiny last year, focusing on planning enforcement. First of all, we'd just like to thank everybody that helped us with the review. So we had Councillor Harwood, Councillor English, Sue King, our planning enforcement team leader, and Rob Jarman, our head of development management, that came into the committee and helped us with our questioning. And it was done within the committee this time rather than work groups, so because it was a smaller subject and it worked quite well. So our recommendations to the Cabinet are on page 26. We've got 4 of them, and that's really, it's quite a short report, but I'm happy to take any questions, and we hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Any comments, particularly, I guess, from Councillor Harwood, but any comments from the Cabinet? Councillor English?
Sorry, Councillor Harwood was ahead of me, I think.
Yeah, I would just like to thank Councillor Russell and the committee for putting this report together, which will be given due consideration and discussed going forward. I think, you know, I spoke at the various committee meetings anyway, so I don't want to kind of go over that again. But I think it now needs to be considered alongside our existing processes, and hopefully we can implement some, if not all, of the changes proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor English?
Indeed, although it's a short report, I think the members of the Cabinet would be well advised to give it consideration rather than to respond in a knee-jerk fashion this evening. So all scrutiny reports should be given full consideration and a considered response, and hopefully that is what you will receive.
Thank you. And Councillor Summerskill?
Yes, I'd just like to comment as a parish councillor that we've had Sue King of Enforcement speaking to at least 2 of ours, and the topic of the frozen investigator post was a solid topic of many of the parish councillors, and I would like this treated as a matter of urgency and perhaps some update soon to parish councils on that.
Thank you. Did you want to come back on any of that, Councillor Russell, or are you happy?
No, I think just picking up on Councillor Summerskill's point, I know some of the parish councils have found that training really helpful on the planning enforcement, so that's why we came up with recommendation 1, which was to make sure that every parish council and anyone else that was interested had the planning enforcement general training, so we thought that was really worthwhile. And yeah, the frozen investigator post was something that we were all very concerned about in the committee, and that's why we've got that on the recommendations as well. So thank you for taking those forward.
Thank you. There are two recommendations. Firstly, that obviously we receive it, but we have done that. Secondly, that we do a response via the completion of a scrape report. Are we agreed on those? Great, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Russell. Okay, Cabinet Forward Plan is agenda item 17. You've got it in front of you. There are a couple of points I think Councillor Thompson would like to make. His hand's gone up.
Thank you, Chair. I think these have been sorted out in the wash-up of our checking the papers, so for awareness of people listening to this and following along, from page 35 in our published paper pack, the adoption of the HMO SPD, the assigned Cabinet member for that is Councillor Harwood, not myself. Thank you for agreeing. Page 184, the enhanced interpretation of historic buildings. I've just asked for confirmation that that is Natalie Moore. Thank you. 185, the voluntary and community services supporting resilient communities, the lead officer space needs to be filled in. And the healthy borough through health in all policies, I believe that that is HSC Cabinet Lead, myself, rather than Councillor Nagy. And then finally, on 186, there should be two joint Cabinet Leads, both community cohesion and HSC, as markets comes under economic development.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Are there any other comments from members on the forward plan? If there's not, is that noted? Thank you. Okay, item 18, Maidstone Community Safety Partnership Plan. Councillor Nagy, I think you're introducing this, supported by Mr. Jeans and Mrs. Woodhouse.
Thank you. The report introduces the new Community Safety Partnership Plan for Maidstone, written by MBC on behalf of the Safe and Maidstone Partnership. The new plan, an evolution of the last plan, sets out the top priorities for keeping people safe and reducing crime in our borough in 2025 to 2028. The plan has been shaped by local data and feedback from residents and members of the Safe and Maidstone Partnership, which includes the Kent Police and other key organisations. One important change is the addition of a new priority to tackle violence against women and girls, which residents and councillors have rightly said needs more focus. The plan focuses on five main areas: preventing and addressing violence against women and girls. 2 is reducing serious violence. 3 is reducing the harm of domestic abuse. 4 is keeping children and young people safe. And 5 is providing a safe town centre. The plan has already been well supported by our partners and our Overview and Scrutiny Committee. This is the last step before it goes to full council for final approval, and my recommendation is to support this plan in its adaptation next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nagy. Mr. Jeans or Mrs. Woodhouse, would you like to add anything? No? Okay. Any questions, comments from members? Just to say, personally, I think this is an excellent plan. I saw Councillor Cox and then Councillor Harwood.
Thank you. Just to say as well that I think this is an excellent plan, and just one point I just wanted to raise for future iterations. I'm aware of a case in my community which isn't domestic abuse, it's domestic neglect. 95-year-old estranged, irrevocably estranged from her family and relying only on neighbours to look after her, and that's obviously, there's always a little bit of a barrier between what you can do as a neighbour and what you can't. You're not family. But the health system and the social system around her, the individual is very much, you know, I want to live independently, but her capability of doing so is diminishing. And actually, if in future we could have a section in this report that actually looks at, you know, what actions could be taken in that type of scenario, as we've got an ageing population. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chair. It was really a question to Mr. James. if, from a community safety perspective, you were to ask anybody in any of the streets in my ward what the biggest challenge and danger is, it's vehicle speed, it's nuisance vehicles, it's dangerous driving, it's injuries which relate to them, and I've been touched by that in my own family. But it doesn't feature as an area of focus within the document. And I'm just wondering if there's a reason why it's not there, and whether it should be, effectively.
It is something that's considered. The KCC Community Safety Plan for the county does have, which we obviously contribute towards, does have road safety as one of its 8 priorities, I think it is. I think when we look at our strategic assessment and look at the data in terms of the areas of of most damage to the communities, a lot of them are kind of the hidden issues that we don't necessarily see or get reported to us. So in comparison to road traffic incidents, which have significantly decreased statistically, they still obviously occur, and there's a role for us to play. And we do, through the ward cluster meetings, as an example, work with parishes and ward members to lobby for or advocate for speed reductions if there's a particular area where it's a concern. So Bearsted, for example, one of the early cluster meetings in Bearsted highlighted speeding as one of their priorities. It comes up in most of the rural priorities, to be fair. A lot of the data and a lot of the Speedwatch data shows that the people responsible are likely to be the people living in the vicinity of that speed check. So it's usually local people that know the roads that take those risks. But what we did with Bearsted Parish Council is empowered them to take their own motion forward to KCC, and that led to speed reduction on the A20. So it's something that we would do in the round, but it's not something that we have highlighted in this particular plan because it doesn't feature high enough in the data set, I don't feel. But it's something that we can look at in future iterations for sure.
If I may come back, thank you for that. I am a little bit puzzled by that, because I think actually personal injury accidents arising from vehicle crashes, the last year the figures are available, there was actually an increase. So it's something we need to look at. But if we could potentially look at that and just get some stats around it. I understand the road safety work that Kent County Council carry out, but I think it's slightly bigger and different from that. It's in terms of it's the whole range of danger and nuisance, from irresponsible driving and use of cars. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to bring Mrs. Broom in to respond to Councillor Cox.
So, sorry to hear about the experience of your constituent. I've got 2 things to say really in response. Firstly, this strategy is primarily aimed at addressing crime and disorder. So I don't think it's the right route to be tackling the things that you have described. But there are other routes that we can help with. We do have a very good and close working relationship with our peers in terms of safeguarding and through that support that can be perhaps or advice that can be provided in terms of the vulnerable adult that you have described. So if that would be helpful, then obviously offline, happy to assist with that.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? No. The proposal in the paper is it's on the other page. That we agree the draft. This, I think, goes to full council, as recommended to council. Are we happy to agree and recommend this draft goes to full council? I saw Councillor Harwood.
Yeah, happy to agree that, but I would like some sort of a kind of reference to the future that we consider.
Yes, yeah, in terms of the stats you've mentioned, yes. Hopefully Mr. Jeans picked that up. But yes, okay, so we are agreed that this can go to full council. Good. Thank you. Right, so item 12 and 19 together. Councillor Nagy. I'm not sure quite when I bring Councillor Russell in, because you're on item 12, aren't you? Councillor Nagy, do you want to go first, and then I'll bring Councillor Russell in straight after, and then we can have a wider discussion.
Well, I am the chosen one tonight. I must say before I get into my words, that this has been well looked into, and people don't realise how the legal things go with drones. It's one thing I've learned in my time. You just can't put a drone up without really having pre-permission, and that's what's making it a nightmare, but we've looked into it. Thank you for the Crime and Disorder Committee for suggesting the idea of buying a drone for the community protection team. It's a modern and appealing idea that at first glance seems like it could help us deal with nuisance vehicles more effectively. However, after looking into it carefully, officers have found that using the drone is unfortunately much more complicated and expensive than it first appears. While the idea is attractive in principle, it comes with a range of legal, safety and training requirements, and the costs are significantly higher than expected. As recommended in the report, our focus should instead remain on the intelligent-led approach that officers have already outlined. This method is already delivering results, works well with our partners like Kent Police, and avoids the risks and the costs that come with a drone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nagy. I probably should have, having listened to that, I should have brought in Councillor Russell first, so apologies. Would you like to make your case now?
I feel we're going to go slightly the wrong way around here, but so I probably should say that Overview and Scrutiny obviously sit as the Crime and Disorder Committee periodically through the year, and through this there was an item brought forward about nuisance vehicles, and that was discussed in depth, and officers helped us, look at all of the different avenues. And one item that came forward as a recommendation was that we purchase a drone for use specifically by the community protection team. We're aware that we do use them in the waste crime team, and we felt that, the committee felt that it was a fairly inexpensive way of deploying some added technology that could help. So that was really the origin of the request.
Thank you. Before I bring members in, I'm just going to bring Mr. Jeans in terms of the drone. There's comments in here about the ability to use drones in this kind of scenario. So it would be useful to get your view on the legal aspects of it.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to clarify this point. As Councillor Nagy is covered in his introduction, when the original report was taken that provided an update, as was recommended by this Cabinet when we were asked to consider how we were addressing nuisance vehicles, particularly off-road and quad bikes. We'd made reference to some initial investigation work we'd done looking at the drone technology that our waste crime team already use. So that was referenced in the original report, which looks like a relatively cheap option. However, having had the opportunity to go away and look at this in far more detail, and listening to the words of the members that made the request around using the drones to actively pursue riders in particular, it moves us into a very different arena. When you look at space and land, the drones, as referred to in the report, we regard as being passive. So they just sit above the area that they're looking at, and they're looking for, if we were using it in this scenario, egress and access points to an area of land. When we move into the realm of pursuit, it shifts the drone's legal status, as was outlined in Appendix 3 under Section 2 for regulatory considerations, whereby the Civil Aviation Authority would regard that as being a medium risk action, and that in itself means that we would be looking at some additional requirements which would include, but not limited to, Civil Aviation Authority to do some of the operations, advanced pilot training because of the risk of losing sight, direct line of sight with the drone, and flying through the horizontal plane around obstacles. A much more advanced and specific insurance requirement, and increased GDPR requirements because you would be looking at individuals, and then you've got the risk of identification factors. That in itself might then trigger implications under RIPA, which, whilst not specifically outlined in the report, is a consideration under our GDPR data protection assessment that we would do if we were undertaking this work.
Thank you, Mr. Jeans. Councillor English, you indicated.
Yes, I think Mr. James has covered some of what I was going to say, but having been involved quite a lot with the use of drones for waste crime, it is a different sort of regulatory environment because we're looking, and also usually a somewhat different evidentiary environment because one is usually looking at either a particular location or entry, as has been said, to and from that location. So there's a reasonable grounds for suspicion of vehicles accessing a particular site, whereas if we were using the drones for surveillance, we would potentially be essentially in a fishing expedition, which is or could be accused of being in a fishing situation, which is not necessarily the same as actually being in one, but in terms of the legal mire we would then get into is essentially the same situation. So, so essentially, it's quite hard to see a situation where the committee's, I think, essential requirement that this be a tool that could be deployed quickly and proactively. It's difficult to see how that would work in practice because there's quite a few hoops to go through, which means we could get the permissions probably, but it'd take quite a while. So one wouldn't therefore be able to send a drone out quickly to respond. And that's what really is needed. If this were to be an effective use of time and money, it requires quick deployment in most cases. So it's one of those ideas that perhaps we should keep an eye on in case the regulatory environment gets simplified or the technology gets simplified. But at the moment, it's very complicated and would actually probably prove quite expensive to operate if for a very minimal return at the moment. It's a shame because I really was quite hopeful that it would give us a technological weapon that we could actually use, but having looked at it, the regulations around this are such a nightmare to operate that it would be impractical, I fear.
Thank you, Councillor English. Any other comments? Councillor Harwood.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have some experience of using drones from my previous employment, and I can vouch for the fact that there are significant legal implications on how and where you use the technology. And very often we actually utilise the emergency services kit rather than our own because of that legal situation. And I think there is a very significant difference between waste crime and the sort of antisocial activity we're describing here. With waste crime, the drones are usually looking at static and inanimate things like piles of tyres and so on. They're not actively engaging with unpredictable human beings on big, heavy, dangerous machinery, where we would not want someone to be distracted by a drone and run someone over or something, anything like that. So there's some quite significant concerns there. So though I understand the sentiment, I think it grinds up against the practicalities. And I think, as Kent Police colleagues have stated, I think the way ahead is ongoing and effective engagement with them. And also, it's got to be said, a lot of the problems occur outside of Maidstone Council influence, really, on places like the Pilgrim's Way and so on, where we are muddying the waters a little bit if we're mixing agency engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Councillor English, you make a good point about keeping a watching brief on the changing legislation, and I wonder if there is a further step we could take. I'm very happy if Cabinet agree to write to the relevant minister to say, can you simplify things? We'd like to get into this a bit more actively, but at the moment the regulatory requirements are simply too large, because I think we all want to crack down on this. Perhaps if Mr. Jeans could help me construct such a letter, that would be really helpful.
I'm quite happy to support that. We need to simplify it.
So I think we've got. So there are two recommendations then. One is that we don't buy a drone, and the second one is that I write to the relevant minister requesting a simpler process, etc. And I think Councillor English seconded those.
Yeah, if you're going to write a letter, ask for absolutely clarity, what the law is and what the regulations are, because that would be very interesting to all the councillors actually to know that. So that's a good idea.
Absolutely, thank you, Councillor. Okay. So are we agreed? Great. Thank you, Councillor Russell. Right, item 20. This is the Year 1 Action Plan that has been through all three packs and overview and scrutiny. I think it went to overview and scrutiny. I missed that, sadly. It did go there, didn't it? Yes, it did. Thank you. Of course, Councillor English, you stood in for me. It has obviously been based on the one that went to full council back in February as part of the budget work, and was written previous to that, and we've, as I've said a few times now, we've tweaked it in light of local government reorganisation in particular, because that is going to take a significant chunk of capacity from members and officers. I'm not proposing to say much more than that, but I'm happy to open it up for any comments. Councillor English.
Just one comment. One thing that overview and scrutiny did say, which was slightly annoying, but I hear what they're saying, that presentation perhaps is an important thing. The comment was that much of the action plan was town-centric. Well, actually, as I said at Overview and Scrutiny Committee, I don't actually believe that's the case, but it bears emphasis that from the council that we are doing a great deal in the rural area, and it behoves us, I think, to make that very, very clear, because I think that there have been some misunderstandings as to where the breadth of our corporate plan for the Year 1 Action Plan, because it includes actions, for example, moving forward with the Greensand Ridge proposal that are very clearly not town-centric. And we will be coming on to another action, which is definitely not town-centric, in a minute on the next item on the agenda, which is about, later on the agenda, which is about the Rural Prosperity Fund, for example. So I contest with the argument that was put forward on that.
Thank you, Councillor English. Yes, I should have picked that up in my speech, shouldn't I? Apologies. But yes, you're absolutely right. I think there is a reasonable amount in here, plus the UK Rural Prosperity Fund. We've got the GRT site, which hopefully will support some of the difficulties we certainly have seen at planning, and so forth. So I do absolutely agree, but I think we ought to make sure we message that well, so that people in rural areas are aware of what we are doing. Any other comments from members? No. So the proposal is that this revised Year 1 action plan be approved. Are we agreed? Excellent. Thank you. Item 21 is a Q4 finance update. Councillor Cox, I'm guessing this must be you.
You are correct. Okay, I'll try and keep this brief just because I think everyone's baking in here. So first of all, this is the final position arrived at for the fourth quarter. It's a mixture of unders and overs by different service areas. When we reported on this in Q3, we were looking at a 49,000 overspend. And actually the result, just sort of cutting to the summary, is £107,000 underspend. So a big thank you to all of the officers for making that happen. So that 107,000 is a 0.4% variance on the revenue budget. And that's to say it's an improvement on the previous quarter's forecast. The underspends primarily are from household waste and recycling and contribution from interest and investment income. The PAC's reporting overspends primarily because of a shortfall in planning income, vacant units at Loch Meadow, or that obviously is being resolved, and additional costs for temporary accommodation. In setting the current year financial budget 25-26, account has been taken of those overspends, and which we expect to be ongoing, such as the cost of temporary accommodation, etc. The capital expenditure has lagged behind projections, which always sounds bad, but actually could be a good thing. So the expenditure on a number of schemes is behind the projected levels, and that unspent budget will be carried forward. In your papers, there's a breakdown by PACs, which we can go into in detail if you have any questions. Reserves remain at adequate but not excessive levels. And within the earmarked reserves, note that 12.1 million has been set aside in the Housing Investment Fund. Taking account of that additional money in the HIF in this year's budget will give a total figure at the end of 25-26 of 15.6 million. And then finally, there's a recommendation that 5 debts, commercial debts, relating to outstanding business rates set out on page 215 are written off. And this paper has been through all 3 PACs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Are there any comments, questions from Cabinet? Nobody's indicating. There are 3 proposals. Firstly, the revenue position be noted, the capital position be noted, and that Appendix 2, the write-offs are approved. Are we agreed? Excellent. Right. On a roll, guys. Biodiversity climate action plans. Councillor Summersgill, I'm guessing you might be leading this, supported by Mrs. Wickham.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd just like to briefly summarise the history of the borough's climate change strategies and actions since the borough declared a climate emergency in 2019. So the original plan was brought forward in 2020 and written to cover processes put in place for a full decade up to 2030, before there was any sniff of devolution in the air. Updates were provided at suitable times to report progress, and done twice in 2024 from this unit. At the September 24 date, there were 38 actions still in the plan, with 2 not yet due to start, 2 delayed, 7 being investigated, and 27 already implemented. With the change of our biodiversity and climate change manager at the end of 2024, and strong feedback from councillors, residents, and the third-party assessment body in the UK that suggested we were falling behind our own targets and national progress, Shelley undertook to review and revise it, and after much detailed evaluation, we brought the updated strategy to the March meetings of PAC and Cabinet, with a decision there to split biodiversity and climate change into 2 threads of strategy. This was the starting point to take MBC through to the second half of this decade. After approval then in March, we've been working on the detail behind the action plans that you are presented with this evening. Again, one plan for each of the strategies. Both strategy threads set 2 priorities and a number of commitments, as are listed in sections 2.6 and 2 to 2.11 in your papers. Pages 224 to 233 set out these details in a hopefully clear and understandable way, defining which are related to council actions that we can control and which are related to borough-wide actions that we hope to influence. Some specific examples are given in paragraphs 218 and 219. So there are now 78 actions listed in the appendices, 22 for climate change and 56 for biodiversity. Some of these reflect or restate the previous 38 actions, some split a previous action into separate elements, and some are new, based upon resident survey results, national assessment methodology, and legislative changes in the first 5 years. Beneath these 2 action plans is a much larger spreadsheet that Shelley and Jen Stevens will manage, along with me, with almost 200 specific activities, which further breaks down the 78 actions into column headings of reporting measures, budget, costs, the impact rating, responsible management team, responsible cabinet member, target dates and years for completion. This is a live document that we monitor and amend monthly, and I will use it to report on the B&CC progress to committees and third-party assessors who look at what we do and score the council on its targets. The working spreadsheet will hopefully be available in some form for public view, and we're investigating the possibility, when it's in acceptable form, to present the information in our current public-facing carbon dashboard or something similar.
Thank you, Councillor Summersgill. Mrs. Wilkin, do you have anything you'd like to add? No? Okay. Any comments from members? Councillor Harwood?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think even though, as you can tell, there's an awful lot of work being put into this by the relevant officers and by Councillor Summersgill, I think there is a duty and a responsibility upon individual cabinet members to assist delivery of those areas that fall within their portfolio, and that's why some of those underpinning documents, like the spreadsheet that was just referred to, which have attribution in terms of portfolio, are particularly important for all of us, and I think we actually need that kind of up and at the front of our consciousness to ensure that we are delivering on time. Thank you.
Anyone would think you've got an ideological obsession. Councillor English.
I think I have got an ideological obsession. I think I've spent maybe half of my entire time as a councillor trying to improve green spaces of one sort or another in Maidstone, and quite a lot of time outside of being a councillor with various biodiversity initiatives. I think Councillor Harwood made the key point. It's all very well having the best plan in the world, and there's been a lot of work on producing these plans, and very good they are too, but the key point which the public and others will judge us on is delivery, and it would be nice if we get through all of these plans and so quickly we have to do another one, and that's what I really hope we do.
That's a challenge for you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll leave for another day questions as to whether or not the language of ideology is entirely appropriate. I'd like to move to something more concrete, if I may. The Guardian article today reminds us that temperatures hit 40 degrees centigrade in the UK for the first time on record in the heat wave and the drought of summer 2022. Fire brigades in London and South Yorkshire, of all places, declared major incidents as dozens of fires broke out and ripped through houses, schools, churches and farmland, while there was widespread disruption to transport and power systems. More than 1,000 excess deaths among older people were recorded around the 4-day peak of the heat wave, with more than 3,000 heat-related deaths in England over the summer of 2022. As the newspaper reports today, Dr. Nick Dunstone, Met Office Science Fellow and co-author of a peer-reviewed paper in the scientific journal Weather, says, the well-known hot summer of 1976, which I remember personally, had more than a fortnight above 28 degrees centigrade, which is a key heat wave threshold in the southeast of England. Their current study finds that in today's climate, such conditions could persist for a month or more. These findings highlight the need to prepare and plan for the impacts of rising temperatures now, so that we can better protect public health, infrastructure and the environment from the growing threat of extreme heat. As reported by us today, we've reviewed our entire administration's action plan to ensure delivery of as many of our strategic aims as possible before the constraints of local government reorganisation, as Councillor Summersgill has already noted, kick in. The categories Dr Dunstone mentions are exactly those of portfolio holders in this council, including biodiversity and climate change, the new plan that Councillor Summersgill and officers have brought to us, planned for 2030, before we knew what was going to happen with LGR. Can I invite Councillor Summersgill to please comment on the partnerships that he thinks should be built to ensure that the transition from Maidstone Borough Council to whatever arrangement of local government follows us is as seamless as the climate emergency demands?
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Summersgill, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, obviously, as I said in my introduction, this was a 10-year biodiversity climate change plan, and we've looked at it halfway through, and the reason there's 78 actions now compared to 37 before is because some things have arrived and some things have got more complex and more worrying. We also are now faced with the fact of who are we going to be talking to about arranging all these changes as we try and deal with the climate emergency accelerating. But the partnerships go down and up. So whilst we don't know precisely yet who upwards we're going to be dealing with in future Kent, we know that we need to elaborate to our residents, to our parish councils, to other people and volunteers in the area. And that's what some of the statements in the action plan are there, is to try and be the organiser of passing information upwards and downwards and trying to elicit action in a as fast as possible state.
Thank you, Councillor Summersgill. Let's hope that if and when we get a new mayor, that they will take some of the strategic actions Kent-wide in terms of the work that needs to happen. Councillor Wales.
Just to report that the actions for the housing department are all being worked through, as are those with our partners, the registered providers.
Thank you. Good. I see no one else indicating. So we are asked to approve the action plans in Appendix A and B. I think that's been proposed by Councillor Summersgill and Councillor English has seconded it. So are we agreed? Excellent. Item 23, still bidding round. So, Councillor Harwood, you would like to introduce this, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the community infrastructure levy bidding round 2. The critical point here is the appendix, which is the prospectus that will be utilised for bids against the community infrastructure levy funding that we hold. We have sought to minimise the bureaucracy attached to this by essentially reusing the prospectus that we operated in 2019 ahead of the last round. So no change there. Officers will adjudicate bids against that, and then before it comes before Cabinet eventually, just to ensure that it does tally with both central guidance and our prospectus. However, I think philosophically, what I took from this report was the stark mismatch between the available funding and resources and the scale of infrastructure required to support the very significant housing burden that this borough is needing to and has already taken. So I think we really do need to think going forward about how we utilise the data around the infrastructure we need and the funding we actually have to deliver. Thank you. But saying that, I'm happy to move option 1 on page 239, which is that the Cabinet approves the proposed prospectus and the timetable for a second round of strategic seal bidding.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Before I bring you in, Councillor English, there was a recommendation for overview and scrutiny around on this item about removing Appendix 2, which was the sort of the I've got the phrase now, it's gone. But it was there to kind of give some context to the corporate strategy and environment criteria that's in Appendix B on page 274, 275. So the scoring criteria is quite extremely important in terms of bidders and what they should be aiming for. And you'll see that item 3 on the scoring criteria talks about the corporate strategy, and item 4 talks about environmental aims. So it kind of gives some context to that. So I'm not going to remove it from the papers, but it clearly doesn't go out as part of the documentation. The other thing, just to say, in terms of that Appendix 2, and I noticed there were some comments online around why on earth would we want to fund anything to do with water, for example. And it's worth noting that I think it's scoring criteria 2 talks about the infrastructure delivery plan, which has been around, I think, since 2019 in various iterations. And part of that is one of those infrastructure areas is about funding aspects of the water cycle. So I don't think I'm not sure that there's a particular issue with doing that. So, Councillor English, you wanted to come in.
On the latter point, having chaired a review into the water cycle, I would certainly say that there is an infrastructure deficiency. And it, as you say, it is flagged up in the infrastructure delivery plan. So there's no point of principle. The issue, of course, is there is a shortage of available resources, so prioritisation will be necessary. Having said that, if we don't have any adequate water, very quickly all other priorities cease to be of any relevance, because you're not going to be driving anywhere if you haven't got any water to drink, because you'll be an ex-person. So very few corpses drive anywhere. So I take the point. Having said that, in terms of the we're talking today about the documents that will go out for the bidding round, and whether or not the appendix is removed from these papers, and I know which is a moot point because it's already on the papers. It wasn't intended to go out, I think, with the bidding round, so it's a moot point. So as we will be sending out the prospectus and the accompanying documentation rather than that. So that's fine to go ahead with what Councillor Harwood has proposed, I think. It doesn't cut across what overview and scrutiny was saying.
No, quite. Okay, so there's a proposal from Councillor Harwood per the papers. I'm happy to second it to get in before Councillor English. Just got to beat you once in a meeting. Are there any other comments from Cabinet members? I'm not seeing anything. So in that case, are we agreed? Excellent. Item 24 then is the Rural England Prosperity Fund. Councillor Thompson, I think you're introducing this.
Thank you, Chair. So page 279 on our papers, the council has been allocated Rural England Prosperity Fund top-up funding of £161,000 and change for 25-26 as part of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. As you can see in the papers, this is to fund capital projects for small businesses and community infrastructure in our rural areas, supporting local business, and our new corporate priority for fairer economy for people and planet, particularly the REPF intervention on small-scale investment in micro and small enterprises in rural areas. I'm absolutely delighted to report that a growing number of farm businesses are engaging with officers and myself, sharing their ideas for diversifying income streams. We're also looking to support new and improved community infrastructure for essential community services and assets for local people and businesses to benefit the entire local economy. So we're seeing our ambitions for local circular sustainable economy in the rural area coming to real potential. The proposal is that we provide grants between £500 and £15,000 to facilitate projects in commercial premises in rural areas that will improve productivity, operational processes and support business viability and growth. I'm delighted with the work of officers and the support of the PAC members who scrutinise these papers, and I'm happy to move the item. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Mrs Woodhouse, anything you wanted to add?
Only as Councillor Thompson has said, it was very well supported at PAC, and it's lovely to be able to introduce something that helps support the fair economy priority, and we're really looking forward to getting going with it. So, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor English.
I'm very happy to support this and second the proposal. I would just say that it is going to be very valuable to a number of rural communities, and this is a very important project, and it's good that we've had another tranche of funding. I just think it's a pity, but the geographical areas are drawn in such a way that a number of our parish areas are not eligible for the funding, and I think that is an unfortunate situation. Apropos of the previous discussion, it's not so much the town centre or the rural areas that defined under this heading that lose out, but it actually tends to be the suburban fringe of the town centre urban area that is the poor relation in terms of grant funding and support, and that is an issue I think we need as an authority to think about in some ways going forward with other grant funding, because the town centre area clearly benefited from the town centre prosperity funding. The rural area has benefited, most of the rural area has benefited, but there are significant parts of the suburban and near rural area that simply haven't had a penny of either funding stream.
Thank you, Councillor English. I've got Councillor Summersgill, then Councillor Wales.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like a bit of clarification on what diversify within agriculture is under 2.6, because the eligible work under 2.9 does include creation of conversion of existing farm buildings and growth of local food production, could be farm shops. So the diversification of agriculture into other things such as perhaps dog training areas within farmland is a suitable category. I'm just wondering where the specification is, or what's the diversification within agriculture. Perhaps
Thank
it's
you.
too detailed.
I'm looking at Mrs Woodhouse. You might want to come back out of the side of the meeting, I'm not sure, judging by the grin on your face.
You can tell by my face. So this is guidance from the government, so I can get you that detail. They've given us a full list of what this means, so I'll supply that outside the meeting. I'm happy to email it around to Cabinet.
Yeah, so there are some government rules around this that we have to follow. Councillor Wales.
Just for a point of clarification, where would a ward sit that is partly urban fringe and partly rural? Say, perhaps one I could think of like Lewes and Linton.
Yeah, I think this is kind of Councillor English's point, isn't it? Mrs Woodhouse, do you want to comment on that?
Again, the rural areas have been defined by government, so it has to be those that are fully rural. I know when we looked at this previously, when we did the last lot of grant funding, there were some areas on the periphery that even may have a parish council because they're sort of on that age still didn't comply. So we'll be very clear in our guidance that we give out to those applying which areas we're talking about. I think last time we put in a map, and again, I'm happy to share that with you. But it's set by the government, it's not our decision on where the boundary is. They're using the same guidance that they use for European funding for the rural area from my memory, but I'll come back to you with that information.
Thank you. And Councillor Nagy.
I'd really like to have that term explained to me, fully rural, because then you'll have to have fully urban. Anyway.
Thank you. Microphone. So it's been proposed by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor English. I think this is a really welcome thing to happen. So there are two recommendations: that we approve the grant scheme, and secondly, we give delegated responsibility for awarding grants in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Healthier, Stronger Communities to Director of Strategy, Insight and Governance. So, are we agreed? Wonderful. Item 25. This is the Springfield Project Delivery and Investment Plan. Councillor Wales, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, this item relates to the project delivery and investment plan for the delivery of the 103 units associated landscaping car parking as part of the redevelopment of the former Springfield Library site. The report has been through PAC and there were no recommendations from the PAC. Just to say there are exempt papers. If colleagues wish to discuss those, then we'll need to go into closed session. The site has a resolution to grant planning and memorandum of understanding, and section 106 has been agreed. The report covers the procurement process, timeframe and proposed tenure mix of the development being delivered as 100% social rented. The report covers the two-stage procurement process, design stage and work stage, taking into account the new requirement to achieve sign-off on the drawings from the building safety regulator. Sadly, this is currently estimated at around 8 months, but necessary given the height of the buildings prior to the commencement of any works. The report and appendices also provide anticipated costings for both the design stage element and the proposed works cost. Funding sources have been identified and the level of funding required from each source is highlighted in the various appendices. As an additional note, just to reiterate the point I made at the PAC, for those who spend their life on social media making comments about who's going to be living in the accommodation that we're providing, to say that the properties and the homes that we're building, whether it's Maidstone East or Springfield, will remain in Maidstone's control, in Maidstone Property Holdings, and will be local homes for local people. I think we can't say that enough. We're building homes, we're building communities, and I'm very pleased to be doing so. So I would recommend draw to your attention the 6 recommendations on page 288.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for those 6 recommendations? Before Clive gets his hand up, would anyone else like to second it? Go on then, Clive, you can do this one as well. They seem to have... Can't go any faster. No. Are there any... Mr. Corn, do you want to come in? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Obviously, the report highlights the risks with the projects and the funding package that we need. So everything's being taken forward in a very prudent and measured way. We've got a good relationship with Homes England. We got £11 million from them for our first 5 schemes last year. We're further advanced in securing the grant funding package for another project, Maidstone East. And so I think once we get that one done, we should know where we're heading. But more broadly, we're building a reputation as an organisation that delivers in terms of affordable housing. And in the spending review last week, the biggest sums ever were allocated to affordable housing, 39 billion over 10 years. So we're absolutely well placed to access that money and hopefully take this project forward in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, excellent 2 points. Yes, that additional money from the centre is very welcome. And I know, I think both Councillor Harwood and I have said this a few times in terms of the borough has built, I think, a third of all affordable homes over the last 10 years across Kent. And it is obviously something that is passionate for all of us. Councillor Harwood, do you want to come in?
Yes, I absolutely agree that Maidstone Borough has done an awful lot of the heavy lifting in Kent in terms of delivering social and affordable housing. I just wanted to make an observation in that this is quite a challenging site. It's a relatively small site. It is very close, indeed, immediately adjacent to existing residential development. There are some very fine and protected trees on the site as well, just to kind of add to the challenges. And I think the fact that Maidstone Borough Council are managing the project and are taking it forward, it gives some surety, I think, to local residents that we understand and will be as conscientious as we possibly can in the way that this site is taken forward and in terms of the conduct of the development going forward. We've had some real challenges with some of the development in this area in terms of quality of life. So I think it is a positive that MBC are absolutely taking this right the way through the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I can't see anyone else indicating. There are 6 recommendations, or proposals, motions. I'm getting hot and tired now. Whatever they're called, on page 288. I'm not going to read them all out. I think Councillor Wales has proposed and Councillor English has seconded. Are we agreed on those 6? Excellent. Final item. Councillor Ross, I think you wanted to speak on this. I'll bring you in once. Who is it? Councillor Summerskill has introduced the item.
Thank you. This report before you describes a scheme for refurbishment of Maidstone House and the link, which takes place at a decarbonisation project for which approval was given last year. As reported to PAC in January 2025, it wasn't possible to proceed with the partially grant-funded project for decarbonisation of Maidstone House and the link, for which approval was given in 2024. And the outcome of the tender process was the likely contract costs, around 9 million, were well in excess of the approved budget. And in addition, the timescales set by the grant-giving body were extremely challenging and were logistical difficulties in delivering the project as originally conceived. I would note that we did recover 90% of our costs from the government Salix organisation to cover all the costs of that part. It's now proposed the project be reframed to focus on 3 main categories: a fit place for people to work, building refurbishment, and decarbonisation and clean energy. I would notice, I would just make some correction on grant funding to what's in your documents. In 2.7, we say there's no clarity at present about the future of public sector decarbonisation scheme Salix. We have heard since the PACs that is not continuing after the financial statement of the central government. So this project offers the opportunity for the buildings to be decarbonised and also to meet the incoming minimum energy efficiency standard requirements that the government is bringing in. And they're preparing an interim target of EPC C by 2028 and EPC B by 2030, which is still subject to confirmation after consultation. The buildings receive 1.35 million per annum in rental income, and as of 2027, should the current MEES be enforced by central government of an EPC C or above, 70% of the offices within the buildings would become unlettable in their current state. which could jeopardise the commercial income for MBC. So we're wishing to go beyond that and go for the EPC rating of B, and which will provide a higher value rental income as well, in all probability. The details are set out of the works required are set out in item 2.3 on 305. I don't intend to go through everything in the bullet points, but they comprise of internal insulation, secondary glazing and re-roofing, together with complete upgrades to the existing mechanical and electrical installations, and replacement of the gas boilers with air handling units, and no more gas use in the building. And the key components there, the estimated costs have been developed in consultation with various contractors who we've discussed the matters with. Significant savings, obviously, compared with the previous project are expected, and the costs here also include the decant and new rental costs. Whilst it will generate savings, the main financial driver is the need to safeguard the council's investment in Maidstone House, and so to ensure a continued income stream from it. Procurement would go ahead following cabinet approval, but it would be out to designs element and then tender. So we're looking for comments on that. The construction period is liable to be January 2026 to August 2027.
Thank you, Councillor Summersgill. Mrs. Exon, Mrs. Featherstone, anything you wanted to add before I bring in the visiting member? No? Yes, go on.
Just to say that we don't have anything to add, but prepared to answer any questions at all on any of the elements.
Okay. Councillor Russell, you as visiting member, if you'd like to.
Thank you. Hopefully you realise I don't come here unless I'm actually concerned about something. It's your ship and you're sailing it. I am actually concerned about this. It's an awful lot of money. £7.7 million of taxpayers' money to be spent essentially on our own office block. I just do not think these costs are proportionate or justifiable in this current climate. Especially when you, and I'm going to skirt around the yellow papers, but when you give the value of the asset. If the value of your asset is X and then you're going to spend an awful lot more, would you do that on your own home? Your home is worth this. Would you spend that much on repairs? Or would you just maybe consider other options? That's all I'm saying. I just don't think the information is here in order for you guys to make an informed decision on this. And I just think you need more clarity and more time. Like, I think if you turn to section 2.3 that you mentioned, if this was a report that was presented to me, I would want to see the cost of all of those itemised bullet points. How much is the air source heat pumps? How much is the boiler? How much are the hot water systems? What do we need? What's nice to have? Is it essential? What are the quotes for all of these? Package it up and then let's see how much we've got to. You've jumped straight from the bullet points to the big amount of money. And I wouldn't be happy making a decision based on that. If I talk about the MEEP standard, I mean, I've just done a little bit of research on the MEEP standard, so I'm by no means an expert, but I think you can look and see if your money that you're going to put in meets a 7-year payback test. If it doesn't, you can register an exemption against those standards. So is that something that you've looked into? Is that, yes, I know we may, could, should, might lose all of this rental income, but is that an option, which would then mean that we didn't? I would want to know that information. I'm going to skirt around the yellow papers, but net present value of 25 years. Are some of these things going to last for 25 years? Ooh, I'm not sure. And I know that we're saying that local government reorganisation, in this we're saying we're not taking it into account, and yet when we talked about other things tonight, like the corporate plan, the biodiversity and climate change action plan, we were taking it into account. So are we or aren't we? Do we need this facility going forward? All I'm saying is these are the questions that ran through my mind when I read this report. And on that basis, I just couldn't make this decision to spend this amount of money. I do think the risk of reputational damage is mentioned, but that goes both ways. The risk of reputational damage for not spending the money, but the risk of reputational damage for spending this amount of our taxpayers' money on essentially our own building at a time when we're in the background of local government reorganisation, I think there's just so many questions on this basis. I could not possibly recommend that you spend this amount of money right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. There's a few points there. I'm going to look at either Mr Green or particularly on the home value versus business value. I'm pretty aware that they are quite different entities. I wondered if you, either you or Mrs Exon, wanted to say how they're calculated almost, because my understanding is that they're very different.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yes, I think it's important to bear in mind that what we're doing here is safeguarding the asset of the council. So what has been paid or is in the books in the past is in a way irrelevant. We do need, as Councillor Summerskill said when introducing the report, to safeguard future rental income from the council. And what the tables, again, I won't go into the detail of what's on the yellow pages, but what the tables there show is that the income generated from future rental income can be covered by, is in excess of the costs that we would incur. So it's absolutely the right thing from a financial point of view to make this investment in the building. And I would also say, reference was made by you, Councillor Russell, to the council's own building. This is, yes, the council's offices, but it's also let to commercial tenants, so it's securing jobs in the town centre, it's providing a source of employment, people come into the offices, so it's an important part of the economy of the town. That's not in the figures, but it's something that I think ought to be taken into account when looking at this. So yeah, I think it does pay for itself, and so far as the detail is concerned, we can go into part two, because I know the team have done the work on the detail that was referenced, so we could cover that if you want details of the individual components of the proposal.
Charlotte or Katie, do you anything you wanted to add on either of those?
Thank you. Just in relation to the point that was made regarding if your home was worth X, would you spend the same amount? Just wanted to elaborate a little further on that. Potentially, if your home was a large home that you were later going to let individual units within the property, you would probably want to spend that moving forward. I understand the point that was made regarding the individual elements and were they costed, and the answer is yes, they were costed and provided to informal cabinet. So if that's something that needs to be provided again in another stage, we're prepared to do so. It's been completed as a first cost draft, and on the appointment of an employer's agent, we would look to firm that up with further clarity that you would get from the market. We've actually provided the figures with headroom, the idea that you would provide a budget that you can actually achieve based on a lot of lessons, a year's worth of planning that we have had. So I do feel comfortable in the figures that we've provided. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cox and then Councillor English.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to everything that's been said. And first of all, we did have the line item analysis that was carried out by Ms Featherstone. And we spent a lot of time on it. And I think the real reason for that is we're all aware of what happened with the decarbonisation project and the sort of difficult decision we had to make there. But the reality is we do have a building, we do own that building, we have invested a lot in that building, and this is about preservation of that investment. So it's not just the rental income we get from third parties that are an important part of this investment thesis. It's also our own tenancy there, and if we weren't there, we'd be paying rent somewhere else. So those are two income streams that go into the NPV analysis. I also wanted to pick up on your 25-year point, which is a really good point. But if you've ever run an NPV, you'll know that if you cut it off at 15 years, the value, the IRR and the NPV value differ very little, because actually the weighting of the net present value calculation and the investment rate of return valuation is very much front-ended. So, you know, if you did it over 30 years, it would hardly move a needle on the dial. 15 years, hardly move the needle on the dial. But, you know, so just wanted to clarify that point as well. I think that was all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor English.
Yes, I think most of it's been said, but the fact of the matter is that regardless of local government reorganisation, one would expect whoever the local authority are, if they still own this building, to still want to have tenants in it and receiving a rental value from it. So as long as the revenue stream is with a reasonable degree of confidence positive, then that should move forward regardless of whether we're having local government reorganisation. And to an extent, regardless of whether that will still be an office for the Unitary Council, because potentially if it weren't, then there would be a greater rental income because we would be able to sublet that, or the new Unitary Council will be able to sublet that to more businesses. And there is, as we've seen, quite a robust demand for space in that particular building. And we need to maintain that. In a broader context, this council ended up with Maidstone House because of the unavailability in general of other potential headquarters buildings. We did look at a number of others, and boy, were we lucky not to move into Miller House, for example, or Kent House. So it's not as if there are masses of other buildings we could rent or buy, which would suit all of our purposes. We will may be able to, well, I think we will be able to secure some limited office space for a DCAM, but it wouldn't be able to take the whole, of the council all at once. So I think we are where we are, and provided the figures stack up, and having read them in exhaustive detail the other day, I really do think they do now add up. And that we don't have a lot of other options if we are going to keep this as a positive investment for the council. And it's not just for us, it's for our tenants, the people who work for them, the people they sell to, and the wider economy of Maidstone. And as a council, we have a responsibility not just to the residents, and many of these people are residents, but to the wider business community of Maidstone to support a robust economy in this town or in this borough, because otherwise, there won't be much of a borough to live in.
Thank you. Councillor Cox, you want to just come back for a second?
I do. There's one thing I meant to also say is in the analysis, we asked the officers to look at various scenarios, one of which was a do nothing, and I'm not going to go into the numbers here, obviously for yellow paper reasons. One was a do minimal work, the refurbishment that's being proposed here, and there's also an enhanced option that you do the work and then you actually attract the extra tenancy that Councillor English mentioned. Of those options, 3 of them, with the do nothing, etc., are all IRR negative, so they're not really options. The 2 that are positive are the ones that carry out the programme that's being proposed by the officers, and of course the enhanced version of that. But even if we made the decision on the proposal, the returns are within our thresholds, and yeah, so I think we should take comfort from that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, just to be clear, certainly the papers had we looked at 4 potential options. One was do nothing, which clearly we can't do. One was as per the proposal, which is the preferred option. But as you mentioned, doing a minimal refurbishment would be detrimental financially. The 4th option was around selling Maidstone House, which again is a financial problem in terms of the net present value. Clearly, it gives us a good, valuable asset. Once it's done, it will attract additional income. It will be an asset whether or not the new council uses it. It will provide an income for that new council if they choose not to use it. So I think there is a broad concept of longevity within the proposal, one way or another. And clearly, once we've done the work, and if the new council decides to sell it, it's worth a lot more than it is as we sit here. If we simply sell it as it is, I believe there's quite a large write-off we'd have to make, which would impact negatively on us. I'm not seeing anybody else indicate, so there are 3 proposals that the capital expenditure be agreed, that the 4th floor refit works be noted, and the Director of Finance and Resources be given delegated authority to select and appoint contractors, etc. I know Councillor Summersgill has proposed it, and Dave got in there with a very quick hand, sorry Clive, as second. Yes, give him a pat. Are we agreed? Thank you. I now declare this meeting closed.